Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. In the matchless name of Yahushua Mashiach, this is Yah's servant Reginald M. Graham. And we're delighted to be able to come to you once again with another message from the Word of Yah. This has come out of Her, My People broadcast with your host, Reginald M. Graham. I'm just a voice crying in this end time wilderness, preparing the way of Yah, making straight paths for our Messiah, Yahushua Mashiach. The Bible tells us in the book of Matthew chapter 24 and verse 14, this message of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness to all nations, and then shall the end come. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that verse is being fulfilled in your very ears on this day. Now, I want to warn you, this broadcast is not for the faint of heart. We bring the truth raw and uncut. If you are a truth seeker like myself, you have tuned in to the right broadcast. We don't beat around the bushes. We don't tiptoe through the tulips, but we let the chips fall where they may. And we do not apologize for declaring the truth. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get right into our message on this day. There is a lot of confusion today about the true sacred name of the Most High. Some say his name is Yahweh, Yahuwah, 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 and Yahweh. Who is right in the midst of all of this confusion? One of my listeners asked me, can I address this topic? First of all, in 1 Corinthians 14 and 33, Apostle Paul wrote, "For Elohim is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all assemblies of the saints." So, ladies and gentlemen, there's much debate and much confusion about this topic. However, Satan is not the author of confusion, for he thrives in the midst of confusion. The Most High don't want his people to be confused, but for them to know the truth. The purpose of this video is to bring clarity to this topic. There are many using the name Yahuwah or Yahuwah based on the fact that the name Yahudah contains the same letters, as with the exception of the Daleth or D being added. Hebrew reads from right to left. In other words, the Most High name contains Yah, Hey, Wah, Hey. And the name of one of Jacob's sons is Yahudah. Yahuwah Daleth Ha. They say that the Most High name can be made simple by believing that since there is only one letter difference between the two names, we can learn the right pronunciation of the Most High's name by looking at how Yahudah's name is pronounced in Hebrew. But the truth is, we cannot determine the pronunciation of one Hebrew word by looking at how another word is pronounced with similar letters. This is because Hebrew words usually contain missing vowels. The reader has to supply the vowels based on their existing knowledge of the language. Thus, you can have numerous words where there is one consonant difference, and yet they are pronounced completely different. There are some words in the Hebrew where there is only one letter different than Yah's name, yet the pronunciation is different. If we remove vowels from the two English words that had similar consonants, no one would argue that we can learn the vowels of another. For instance, word, W-O-R-D, ward, W-A-R-D, and weird, W-E-I-R-D, could all have the same consonants, W-R-D, but different vowel sounds and different meanings. In fact, there are examples in Hebrew of where two words are spelled exactly the same way, but they are pronounced differently. The word which is pronounced shawl, the name of one of the king of Israel, the first king of Israel, his name was Shaul. Shaul is spelled exactly the same as the word pronounced Sheol, ladies and gentlemen. Shaul means desired, but Sheol means grave. The vowels and meanings are different, but the word is spelled the same. Shaul is spelled the same as Sheol, yet has different vowels. Why would we believe that the Most High name must automatically have the same vowels as Yahudah? If the Yahu and Yahudah means praise Yahweh, this would be a compound word with the Yahu referring to Yahweh and the Da coming from another word altogether, Yeda. Thus, we really can't rely on the Da pronunciation of the final syllable in Yahweh. It is derived from a different source. The reason why Yahweh's name is upon his people is not because Yahudah contains part of Yahweh's name, as some claim. All of Israel is called by his name, including those who don't have Yah, Y-A-H, in their names, like Levi, Dan, and others. The reason why all of Israel is called by Yahweh's name is because of the elements seen in the priestly blessing. Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 through 27. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. So they shall put my name on the children of Israel, and I will bless them, ladies and gentlemen. To base the pronunciation of the Most High's name on how another name or word is pronounced is not sound reasoning, and should be completely disregarded when seeking to understand how Yahweh is pronounced. Furthermore, the pronunciation Yahuwah or Yahuwah does not carry any meaning in Hebrew. This is because they are not legitimate Hebrew conjugations of the root verb hayah, to be or to exist. It's like someone who doesn't know English trying to tell us run changes to ren rather than ran. Yahuwah means nothing in Hebrew. In the same way, ren, R-I-N, means nothing in English. Another pronunciation growing in popularity is Yahuwah. Yahuwah. The term Yahuwah, Y-E-H-O-W-A-H, comes about when the Masorite scribes placed the vowel for Adonai in between the letters of Yahweh's name. This was to show the reader that he was supposed to say Adonai instead of uttering the actual pronunciation of the Most High name, Yahweh. Those who support the Yahuwah pronunciation often say that the scribes were not trying to hide the name, but were actually correct in their vowel pointing. Their evidence is that the first vowel point in Yahuwah produces an sound and not an sound, like the first vowel sound Adonai. But the Masorite scribes had to omit or change the first vowel simply because the first vowel sound in Adonai matches the first vowel in Yahweh. The Quran manuscript of the Septuagint transliterates the first part of the sacred name as Yah rather than Yah or Yah, along with a number of other ancient Greek writers. So the Quran manuscript of the Septuagint transliterates the first part of the sacred name as Yah rather than Yeh or Y-E-H, along with a number of other ancient Greek writers. Nevertheless, there is a way to be certain that the scribes were actually inserting vowels to cause the reader to say Adonai rather than the actual pronunciation of his name. If you have a strong concordance, look up word number 3069. It says Yahuwah, a variation of 3068 used after 136 and pronounced by Jews as 430 in order to prevent the repetition of the same sound, since they elsewhere pronounce 3068 as 136 God. Notice that the vowel points underneath Yahweh's name are different than 3068 and produce the pronunciation Yahuwah. The name Yahweh is the most accurate pronunciation of the Most High's name, ladies and gentlemen. People say that the name Yahweh is a false pagan mistranslation. This is blasphemy. People say that the name Yahweh is associated with paganism and pagan cultures. They say there is no W or E in ancient Hebrew. This is crazy, uninformed nonsense. A consonant we would transliterate as W is Bob. If there was no W and those were just vowels, we will have just a word with two vowels, which is nonsensical words in the Hebrew. The Hebrew was made up of combinations of consonants and vowels, and there are several vowels sound we would transliterate as an E. There are those online that don't know the first thing about ancient Hebrew, but yet they're trying to teach people what the true sacred name of the Most High is, and are uninformed, ladies and gentlemen, teaching nonsense. The name Yahweh is not associated with paganism or pagan cultures. They say they have found ancient Persian coins with the name Yahweh on them. This is a lie. This is not true, ladies and gentlemen. These uninformed individuals giving misinformation, and people are taking it hook, line, and sinker. Ladies and gentlemen, people are being bamboozled by these lies. These misinformed individuals, non-informed individuals, don't know the first thing about ancient Hebrew, but yet they profess to be experts, ladies and gentlemen, in ancient Hebrew. They don't know their head from their behind, ladies and gentlemen. And you people need to stop listening to these folks, because they don't have a clue, ladies and gentlemen. Bless the name of Yah. The name Yahweh, glory to Yahweh, has no association with paganism. They say they have found ancient Persian coins with the name Yahweh on them. This is nonsense, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, the word that they found on these Persian coins is Yahuwah, ladies and gentlemen, which is speaking of a territory, amen, a Persian territory, an ancient Persian territory. So the name Yahweh is not on these coins, but Yahuwah, ladies and gentlemen. And those who teach that the Most High name is Yahuwah or Yahuwah use a chart invented by a man named Levite who does not have any relevant training or expertise in ancient Hebrew, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you know the Hebrew Israelites, they're going with this invented name, Yahuwah. They just want to be different. They don't want to be like everybody else. They just got to be different. Or Yahuwah, ladies and gentlemen, or Yahweh. Glory to Yahweh. They just want to be different, ladies and gentlemen. But the most accurate name today, ladies and gentlemen, is Yahweh. It is Yahweh, ladies and gentlemen. Bless the name of Yah. And these people just putting out confusion and chaos. They confusing people. They just messing people up because they are non-informed, misinformed, and giving people, amen, information, ladies and gentlemen, that is false. That is false. So, those that use the name Yahuwah or Yahuwah use a chart. Listen to this. Invented by a man named Lee White, who does not have any relevant training or expertise in ancient Hebrew, but started up this movement that associated with Hebrew roots, things like that. This is pure, utter nonsense, ladies and gentlemen. This is pure, utter nonsense. There are no experts today living, no experts in the Hebrew language who will begin to take these people seriously. They laugh at them. They call them clowns. Just a bunch of buffoonery, ladies and gentlemen. These people don't have a clue about ancient Hebrew. They don't know the first thing about ancient Hebrew, but yet they're trying to teach people the sacred name, the true name of the Most High. They can go with Yahuwah and Yahuwah and Yahweh and Yahuwah and all these other names, ladies and gentlemen. Bless the name of Yah. They can go with this stuff. But I'm going to stick with the name Yahweh, ladies and gentlemen. Some say his name is Yahweh, and the others say it's Yahuwah, 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 and Yahweh. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sticking with Yahweh. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm staying with Yahweh. They can have all these new modern names, these contemporary names, these invented names. The name Yahuwah is an invention. Amen. Been manufactured. It's a creation of man, ladies and gentlemen. The name Yahuwah is an invention. Yahuwah is an invention. These are inventions and creations of men. But the name Yahweh, the name Yahweh is the Creator's, is the Most High, true, sacred name, ladies and gentlemen. You can, now listen to this. This will prove that the name Yahuwah is false. The name Yahuwah, the name Yahuwah is false, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot follow a vowel after a vowel in Hebrew. You cannot follow a vowel with another vowel in Hebrew, except in certain circumstances that do not attain here, ladies and gentlemen. The name Yahuwah carries no meaning in the Hebrew. Just an invention like the words Jehovah and Jesus. Has no meaning whatsoever. People are convinced today that the name Yahuwah, the name Yahuwah, those are the two main names, especially with the Hebrew Israelites, that they are promoting and propagating today. They've been inundated by this fake and false name. It's a fake name, ladies and gentlemen. It's false. The name Yahuwah is false. It's fake. I can't make it no plainer to you, ladies and gentlemen. Those that know the Hebrew language know. Those that know Hebrew know that this name is an invention. It has nothing to do, has no bearing, ladies and gentlemen, on the true sacred name. Glory to Yahweh. And as I said, you cannot follow a vowel after a vowel in Hebrew except in certain circumstances that do not attain or pertain to this topic. The name Yahuwah means nothing in Hebrew. Just an invention like the words Jehovah and Jesus. Now, as I said before, those that embrace the name Yahuwah and Yahuwah use a chart. Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. Use a chart invented by a man named Lee White, who does not have any relevant training or expertise in ancient Hebrew, but started up this movement that's associated with Hebrew roots. Are you listening to me? And they're going to rely on a chart from a man that don't even know his head from his behind. A man that don't know the first thing about ancient Hebrew. And they're going to rely on his studies, ladies and gentlemen. Most scholars today, most biblical scholars, use the name Yahweh. They say that name is more accurate than any other name. And you can even see the ancient writings, ladies and gentlemen, of Hebrews. And they all, almost 99% of them, embrace the name Yahweh. Even the Jewish historian Josephus, ladies and gentlemen, the Jewish historian Josephus pronounced his name Yahweh. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, he did. Glory to Yahweh. And amen. Pronounce his name Yahweh, showing the four consonants YH, WH in the sacred name of Yahweh. So all these new versions and amen fabrications of the name Yahweh, leave them alone. Get away from them, ladies and gentlemen. But his name is Yahweh. The Hebrew Israelites camps have confused so many and have put out misinformation. And we have embraced this stuff. Not knowing Hebrew, we take their word. And those that put out this information don't even speak Hebrew and don't even know, ladies and gentlemen, Hebrew. Don't know the first thing about Hebrew. But yet they're trying to teach. You have folks online trying to teach folk and telling folks that the name Yahweh has pagan roots and pagan association, that it was a pagan gods, the pagan gods by the name of Yahweh. Ain't that foolishness? It's blasphemy, ladies and gentlemen. It's blasphemy. They're lying to y'all people. They're giving y'all misinformation. It is not true. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how they get views, subscribers. It's all about making money. Who can have the most intriguing video? And it's all about making that dollar. It's all about making that money. But this is not even sound reasoning, ladies and gentlemen. Don't even make sense. Any Hebrew scholar would tell you that his name could not have been Yahuwah. Amen. Two vowels could not follow. Amen. A vowel could not follow another vowel. Anyone would tell you, ladies and gentlemen. Anyone would tell you. Glory to Yahweh. Amen. Would tell you if there any Hebrew scholar in the Hebrew language would tell you that's impossible. It could not have happened. So don't embrace, ladies and gentlemen, these lies. I'm sticking with the name Yahweh. You can have that other stuff. I'm staying with the name Yahweh, and I'm staying with his son's name, Yahuwah, and we will be doing a teaching on his son's name. It's not Yahshua, it's Yahushua, ladies and gentlemen. It's not Yeshua, it's Yahushua. We'll be doing a study, a video, even on, amen, the son's name. Bless the name of Yahweh for the truth. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to close here, and we bless Yahweh for you tuning in with us once again with another message from the word of the Most High. Ladies and gentlemen, we're so grateful for each and every one of you. Well, amen, we would appreciate if you would like, share, and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. Also, amen, write your comments. We love interacting with you. And we're so grateful for all the emails we get in. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank Yahweh for all the emails. Bless the name of Yah. Yah's doing some great things. Yes, he's on the move. Bless his holy name. We have many asking us, can we address certain topics, ladies and gentlemen, and just be patient with us. We're going to get to the topics as soon as we can. I won't go over 3 days, believe me. You send me, amen, a request of a topic you would like me to address. It won't be over 3 days, most likely. It will be between 1 and 3 days. We will, amen, deal with that topic, ladies and gentlemen. Just like this message, it was one of our listeners asked us to address, amen, this topic. This is a topic that people really need to hear in these end times, ladies and gentlemen. So we are so grateful, amen, for that, amen. And I ask Yahweh for our friends, amen, that ask us to address certain topics, that it will be topics that will be a blessing to others. Let them ask, amen, topics that will edify and that will give insight and enlightenment to others. And we thank Yahweh because he has been doing, amen, that. So if you have a request about a certain email us, amen. Go down in our description box and you'll see our email, and email us, and we will jump on that as soon as possible. Also, we thank Yahweh for our friends, amen, that support this ministry, that send donations, amen, love gifts. We're so grateful for you. We thank Yah for your offerings. And may Yahweh bless you and yours 100-fold. You show us your appreciation. You show us, amen, that you are happy and excited about this channel, ladies and gentlemen. You show your appreciation by giving. And we thank Yahweh for you. Some people can care less. Some folk, all they want to do is take, and they never give. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank Yahweh, amen, for you. People being blessed by this ministry. People being enlightened by this ministry. People being helped by this ministry. Truths is being imparted unto individuals. And so they want to be a blessing to this ministry and support. And we thank Yahweh for each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen. Well, until next time, may Yahweh continue to bless you and smile on you is our prayers. Peace and blessings. Shalom.